Joran Ilix always believed grief was quiet. Not the kind of grief that cried out in the night or shattered plates across the kitchen floor, but the kind that settled into a person like mist. That was the grief he understood, the silent one. The one that lived behind his mother's eyes since his father disappeared in the Martian collapse 17 years ago. He hadn't expected it to return. Not like this. Not so soon. 3 days ago, the silence in their apartment had been pierced by the unmistakable whine of an off-world skycruiser. Sleek, silent, and far too ominous to belong to anyone benign. A ship from the council. By the time Joran had reached the front door, his mother was already in cuffs, silver restraints glowing faintly against her wrists. She hadn't resisted. She never did. Her only words to him, as the agents flanked her on either side, were soft but steady. "Don't fight them, Joran. Just, keep playing your music." Then she was gone. Taken without a warrant, without a charge he could understand, without a goodbye that meant anything. The apartment had never been quiet since, not in the same way. It was hollow now. The news hadn't picked it up. The authorities had offered no explanations. The neighbors whispered about alien law, about smuggling, about betrayal. But Joran knew his mother. Whatever secrets she carried, they weren't malicious. And that was what scared him most, because the council didn't operate on truth. They operated on preservation. On control. And he had no way to reach them. So, on the third night, Joran did the only thing he knew. He played. The melody curled through the cracked open window like smoke, rising into the humid Cinder Vale evening. His guitar, a relic of a gentler age, was warm against his chest, the wood worn smooth beneath his fingers. He played for hours, letting his sorrow speak in chords that no language could carry. That's where she found him. Lunara Velen wasn't looking for music when she wandered past the dilapidated balcony. She wasn't looking for anything, in truth. Her mission had already veered into dangerous territory, just by being on Earth. Just by caring. But when the music reached her, she stopped. Not because it was flawless, though it nearly was, but because it felt like something more than notes. It felt like someone trying not to drown. She looked up and saw him, hunched over, backlit by old string lights and the occasional glint of lunar shimmer from the sky. She almost left then. The line between observer and participant was one her people warned never to cross. And yet, she lingered. When the final note faded into the night, Joran sighed and leaned his head against the brick wall behind him. That was when she spoke. "You're Joran Ilix." His head snapped up. The voice was soft, lilting, strange. Accented in a way he couldn't place, but not hostile. "Who's asking?" he said warily. She stepped forward, hands visible, posture relaxed. "My name is Lunara Velen. I'm not here on behalf of the council." "That's comforting," he muttered, rising slowly. "So why are you here?" She took a breath, her eyes catching the faint purple glow from a passing satellite. "Because I know where your mother is." Joran froze. Lunara had seen many expressions in her time on Earth, wonder, suspicion, even hatred, but nothing hit her like the raw, unguarded hope that bloomed across Joran's face at that moment. "You know," he whispered. "She's alive." Lunara nodded. "Yes. She's been taken to the Thalen courts, in the outer system. Officially, she's charged with unauthorized artifact possession." Joran blinked. "That's ridiculous. She hasn't left Earth in decades." "I know," Lunara said. "But the charges are only part of it." He stepped forward, eyes narrowing. "Then what's the real reason?" Lunara hesitated. The truth was a fire in her mouth, dangerous, searing, but there was no sense hiding it now. "She had a relationship," she said softly. "With someone from my world." Joran stared. "What kind of relationship?" "A union," she said. "An emotional bond." Illegal in the eyes of the council. They've hunted such connections for centuries, afraid they might change things. He didn't speak. Just looked away, his jaw tight. And I was born from that? He asked finally. Lenara shook her head. Not biologically. But emotionally. Spiritually. Yes. You're a product of that love. That defiance. He sat down hard on the bench, guitar sliding off his shoulder with a dull thud. So they took her because she felt something. Because she loved someone they didn't approve of. Yes, Lenara said simply. And because she hid the truth. That part of her still burned for what they tried to erase. He looked up at her. Why are you telling me this? She stepped closer. Because I'm not like them. I've felt too. Things that would brand me a traitor. I've studied your music, your art, your grief. I came to Earth to understand, but I stayed because I wanted to help. Joran's eyes narrowed. Why me? Because your voice is stronger than you know, she whispered. And because your silence is louder than most people's screams. He swallowed hard. You said she's on Thalen. Can you get me there? She hesitated. I can try. But it's dangerous. The council already took my mother, he said. What else can they take? Lenara nodded slowly. Then come with me. There's a ship, disguised as a cargo freighter. We leave tomorrow. He didn't ask how she arranged it. He didn't ask if she was telling the truth. He just nodded, stood, and extended his hand. I'm not afraid, he said. Not if it means seeing her again. Lenara took his hand, her skin cool and smooth, like the underside of a fallen star. I'll keep you safe, she promised. They stood there for a moment, suspended between what was and what could be, until the stars above them shimmered like applause. They traveled through the night on foot, slipping past checkpoints, dodging patrol drones. The world seemed to hold its breath around them. Lenara was quiet, but Joran sensed the tension in her movements. She wasn't just worried for him. She was worried for herself. You've done this before, he said as they walked through a service tunnel beneath the old rail lines. I've tried, she replied. Not all attempts make it through. Most are caught before they breach orbit. Why help me? He asked again. I mean really. She slowed, turned toward him. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark. Because once, I loved someone too. And I stayed silent when they were taken. Joran studied her face. What happened? They died alone, she whispered. And I vowed I wouldn't let it happen again. Joran's heart ached, not just for his mother now, but for this stranger who had risked everything to stand beside him. They reached the ship just before dawn. It was ugly, bulky, rusted at the edges, humming with old tech, but it had wings, and that was enough. Lenara glanced at him before the hatch opened. Once we're out there, everything changes. No turning back. I already turned, Joran said. The moment they took her. She nodded. And they stepped into the stars. The ship smelled like metal and dust and oil, but Joran didn't care. He stared out the viewport as Earth receded, shrinking beneath clouds and satellites. He thought he might cry. Instead, Lenara placed a hand on his shoulder. We have 2 days before we reach the Thalen system, she said. You'll need rest. I won't be able to, he admitted. Not until I know she's okay. Lenara studied him, then reached into her satchel and pulled out a small, crystalline cube. She held it to her temple, then handed it to him. He blinked. What's this? A memory, she said. Of her. From before. Joran pressed it to his forehead. Images flooded his mind, his mother, smiling softly, speaking in a language he didn't know but somehow understood. She was younger, her eyes brighter. She spoke of hope. Of unity. Of him. When he lowered the cube, tears shimmered on his lashes. She never told me, he whispered. She never said. She wanted to protect you, Lenara said gently. Sometimes love hides more than it shows. Joran nodded slowly. Then, in a voice rough with emotion, he asked, "Can I hear your story too?" Lenara tilted her head. "Why?" "Because I think," he said, "if I'm going to fight beside you, I want to know what you're fighting for." She smiled then, sadly, but beautifully. "I'll tell you everything," she said. "But not now." And somehow, he understood. The stars outside the viewport streaked by, painting the dark with silver trails. Inside, Joran sat beside Lenara, feeling something stir beneath the grief and rage. A new kind of silence, one that didn't hurt. One that held promise. And in that silence, a spark ignited. The crash came without warning. The sky had been calm, too calm, and then the turbulence struck like a living thing, slamming into the transport shuttle with such force it ripped metal from metal. Lights flickered. Sirens howled. The stabilizers failed. The ground rushed toward them. Talis Vire didn't scream. He never screamed. He swore, once, loudly, and then yanked hard on the control stick, fighting with everything he had to steer the ship away from the rocky canyons below. He barely succeeded. The crash wasn't graceful. It tore through a grove of crystalline trees on a barren moon called Virulon, just far enough from the Council's jurisdiction to be considered lawless. The ship ground to a violent halt, smoke curling up from its ruined engine. Talis unstrapped himself and staggered to his feet, head ringing, ribs aching. He ran a hand through his ash-blonde hair, now sticky with blood. And then he heard the groan. It was faint, coming from the back of the transport, where the only other passenger had been. He swore again and limped toward the rear cabin, prying open the emergency door. Debris fell around him as he knelt beside the woman crumpled beneath a collapsed bench. She was still breathing, but just barely. Talis had seen her only once before, when she boarded the ship at the outpost, quiet, guarded, eyes like twilight and shoulders drawn tight like she was constantly bracing for impact. She'd told him nothing about herself, paid in gold stones and requested no questions. But as he pulled her free, something flickered across her skin. A shimmer. Like energy attempting to hide itself. She wasn't fully human. He laid her on a salvage tarp and checked her pulse. It fluttered. Weak, but steady. Then her eyes opened, and for a moment, he was the one who couldn't breathe. They were violet. Too deep. Too sad. Too knowing. "Where?" she rasped. "You're lucky to be alive," he said. "We're on Virulon. The ship's gone. So is our exit strategy." She tried to sit up, gasping. Her hand clutched her side. "Don't move," he said gruffly. "You've got internal bruising. Maybe a cracked rib." I have to get to the hearing," she said, pain contorting her face. Talis frowned. "Hearing? The tribunal. The one about them." He narrowed his eyes. "You mean the Earth case?" She nodded weakly. "You're with the Council?" he asked, a flicker of anger rising in his voice. "I was," she said. "I translated for them. I heard everything. The lies. The manipulation. And now what? You're running." Her eyes met his. "No. I'm testifying." He stared at her for a long beat, then leaned back and exhaled. "Well," he muttered, "that's new. They built a fire in a shallow cave not far from the wreckage. Talis had scavenged supplies, water, rations, a med kit. Myra had cleaned her wound, but she still winced every time she breathed too deeply. Talis studied her across the flames. "You said you worked for the Council," he said. "So why the change of heart?" Myra didn't answer right away. Her hands were curled tightly around a warm ration tin. Because I saw what they did to her, she said finally. Her. The woman from Theoria. The one they took for illegal bonding. She looked up, and her eyes gleamed with unshed tears. She was dignified. Brave. She had no weapon, no crime. Just, love. Talus was quiet. He understood too well how the council punished love. And the boy, Myra continued. Her son. He doesn't even know the truth about her. About what she gave up. Talus rubbed his jaw. You're trying to help them. She nodded. He tilted his head. You ever stop to think they might not want your help? She stiffened. That's the difference between you and me. I can't not care. That surprised him. Not the defiance, but the pain beneath it. He leaned forward. And what about you? What do you mean? What did you give up to follow their orders? Her lips trembled. And then, like a dam breaking, her voice lowered into something so raw it almost didn't sound like hers. I was supposed to be bonded. Talus didn't move. With someone from Norien, she said. My assignment was temporary. But we connected. We started sharing memories, songs, dreams, little things. The council found out. I was given a choice. Return to service or be exiled forever. He said nothing. He didn't have to. I chose duty, she whispered. And I've regretted it every day since. A long silence settled between them. Then Talus shifted closer. You ever think about going back? He asked. Every day, she said, barely audible. But she's gone now. They took her. Talus watched the way her shoulders trembled, the way her voice cracked when she said her. Not a lover. A soul twin. Someone the council erased. He felt something stir in his chest. Not pity. Something else. Then why keep fighting? He asked. Because I can't let them do it again, she said. To anyone. Talus reached for a flask and handed it to her. You're stronger than you look, he said. I'm breaking, she whispered. You don't seem broken to me. She smiled, barely. You don't know me. Maybe not, he said. But I know what it looks like when someone runs. You're not running. She stared into the fire. You didn't ask why I shimmer. He shrugged. Didn't seem polite. She chuckled softly, then looked at him. I'm half-born. My mother was from Lythiar. My father, human. I was raised to hide it. To blend. But sometimes, when I'm afraid or feel too much, it bleeds through. He nodded slowly. That's why the council trusted you. And why they'll destroy me if they catch me now, she said. Talus stood. Then we'd better not let them catch you. She looked up. He offered a hand. There's an old calm tower up the ridge. Still intact, last I heard. We get there, maybe we can call and help. Or at least warn them. Why help me? She asked. You don't even know me. He hesitated. I don't do the council's bidding, he said. Haven't in years. But you're trying to undo something real. That takes guts. She smiled again, brighter this time. I didn't catch your name. Talus, he said. Talus Vire. Myra Enel, she replied. Their hands touched. And something passed between them. Not a spark. Not fire. Something gentler. The first breath after drowning. The hike was brutal. Cold winds sliced across the barren terrain, and jagged rocks bit into their boots. Myra moved slowly, favoring her injured side. Talus stayed close, steadying her without speaking. At one point, she stumbled. He caught her, and for a moment, their faces were inches apart. She blinked up at him, breathless. You don't flinch. What do you mean? When I shimmer, she said. Most humans look away. You don't. He looked into her violet eyes. I see you, he said simply. Her breath caught in her throat. They didn't speak for the next mile. When they reached the tower, Myra immediately began working with the console, her fingers trembling from cold. Talus stood guard outside, watching the horizon for anything that moved. Then he heard it. A low rumble. A ship. Fast. Too fast. He ran inside. Time's up. Myra turned to him, face pale. I got a signal through. But I don't know who's coming. They heard the hiss of descent outside. Talus looked at her. You ready to run again? She took his hand. No. Not this time. The figures who emerged from the ship weren't council soldiers. Not fully. They were enforcers. Shadows of the old regime. Mercenaries paid to silence rebellion. Talus and Myra stood side by side, hearts pounding. You have no authority here, Myra shouted. The leader stepped forward. You forfeited that protection when you betrayed the council. Talus raised his weapon. Then you'll have to go through me. The enforcers raised theirs in turn. And the air shifted. Myra's shimmer brightened. Her body glowed with energy. Her voice, when she spoke, echoed with power. Leave now. Or I'll show you what you fear. The leader hesitated. Just long enough. And then the cliff behind them exploded in light. A second ship arrived, smaller, sleeker. And Joran Illich stepped out. Lunara Velen beside him. Joran raised a pulse cannon. You heard her, he said. Back off. The enforcers blinked. Calculated. And retreated. Silence returned. Talus turned to Myra, stunned. She stared at Joran, her face softening. That's him, she whispered. That's the boy. They said the crystalline forest was haunted. Rai Solon didn't believe in ghosts, not the kind that wandered with chains and regrets, but he believed in echoes. And the forest echoed with pain. He knelt beside a violet-veined tree, its bark pulsing softly with bioluminescent light, and placed his gloved hand gently against the roots. The tree thrummed beneath his palm, like a heartbeat trying to remember how to feel. You're dying, he whispered. But not beyond saving. His voice trembled. Not from fear, but from something far deeper. Loneliness. He'd been here for 2 years. Exiled to this hidden moon on the edge of Sector Virulon for violating one of the Thalen Accord's most sacred laws, bonding across species. His lover had been human. And his punishment wasn't just exile, it was silence. A forced disconnect from his people's mind share, the collective stream of emotion and memory he'd once been part of since birth. They had erased him. He wandered the forest like a revenant, nurturing broken flora and keeping his heart alive by nursing the wild, fractured world around him. The crystalline trees were sensitive to emotion, resonant beings that absorbed joy and sorrow alike. They had become his family. But even they couldn't hold him the way she had. Then, one morning, the forest shimmered. He rose slowly, hand tightening around his seed blade. The light filtering through the trees was different, fractured. And the hum beneath the ground had shifted, almost like a presence. He moved silently, slipping between trees, until he saw her. She was crouched beside a spire bloom, her hand hovering above its petals. The spire bloom was one of the forest's rarest growths, known to open only in the presence of emotional clarity. And it was opening. The woman knelt in reverence, sunlight catching the waves of her dark brown hair. Her back was to him, but something about her was electric, like a note suspended just before a song begins. She reached out and touched the spire bloom. It glowed. And Rai stepped forward. Stop. She spun, startled, but not afraid. Her gaze met his, and Rai nearly forgot to breathe. Her eyes were gold-flecked, bright with intelligence. She was human. And yet, more. "I didn't mean to intrude," she said, standing slowly. "I didn't think anyone was here." "No one is supposed to be," Rai said. "That's the point." She tilted her head. "Then you're like me." His brows knit. "Like you. Running. Hiding. Breathing just enough to not be hunted." Rai studied her. "Who are you?" "Mina," she said. "Former emotional resonance researcher for the Cross-Species Alliance project." He blinked. "That was dissolved 5 years ago." Declared subversive. "I know," she said. "They burned our lab. Some of us survived. I disappeared. But I didn't stop the work." Rai stepped closer. "You're resonant." She smiled faintly. "Highly. It's why they wanted me to shut up and disappear." "And why did you come here?" "Because I heard a rumor," she said, voice softening. "Of a sanctuary where the heart is still sacred. Where love isn't a violation." Rai exhaled slowly. "There's no sanctuary here." "But you're still here," she said. He looked away. "Because I have nowhere else to go." She approached gently, like one would with a wounded animal. "That bloom responded to me. That means something, doesn't it?" He studied her for a long moment, then turned and gestured. "Come." She followed him through a winding trail of trees that shimmered in their wake. He led her to a glade where crystal water ran over jagged stones, and overhead, the branches formed a cathedral of iridescent light. "This place," he said, "used to be part of the sacred bonding grounds. Before the council outlawed our traditions. Here, 2 people could share a soul bridge." "A soul bridge," she repeated, voice low. "A resonance that allowed full emotional transparency," Rai said. "It's how my people formed life bonds. But it was deemed dangerous. Too vulnerable. Too honest," Rai said quietly. He looked at her then, really looked. "You understand?" She nodded. "I studied human and alien emotional fusions for years. I know what it's like to feel everything someone else does. Most people don't want that. They run. And you?" She smiled. "I stayed. Until they burned everything I loved." Rai's breath hitched. He wanted to ask her what she'd lost. But the words stuck. "Instead," he said, "this forest, it reacts to feeling. That's why it responded to you." She walked toward the stream, knelt, and dipped her fingers into the water. "So does that mean I belong here?" "No one belongs here," Rai said softly. "That's why we're here." A silence settled between them, not cold, but solemn. Shared. Irie looked over her shoulder. "And what about you? Who did you bond with?" He didn't answer right away. "She was kind," he said finally. "Curious. Her laugh broke every law of my world. She made me forget that my people only loved through duty." "What happened?" "They found us," he said. She ran. "I surrendered. I thought they'd spare her." A shadow passed over his face. "She didn't survive," he said. Irie stood and crossed to him. Her hand brushed his. "I'm sorry." He didn't flinch. That night, they shared a fire by the edge of the glade. Irie opened her bag and pulled out a small device, oval, organic-looking, laced with glowing veins. "A resonance pulse reader," she said. "I kept one. Never thought I'd use it again." "What does it do?" "It reads emotional frequency and harmony between 2 beings. It was used in pre-bonding trials." Rai was silent. She turned it on. It lit up. She looked at him. "May I?" He hesitated. Then nodded. She touched the device to her temple, then to his. A soft chime echoed through the glade. The device pulsed with a warm gold. They both stared. "This is," she whispered. "Almost perfect resonance." Rai's throat tightened. "That's not possible." "Nothing about us is supposed to be possible," she said. He met her gaze. "Irie." "Yes. I haven't felt peace since the day I lost her." Her voice trembled. "And I haven't trusted anyone since they erased me." He reached for her hand. "Then maybe we both deserve something different." She nodded. And they leaned in, just slightly. Not a kiss. Not yet. But something softer. The brush of souls meeting across scars. The next morning, Rai awoke to birdsong. Irie sat by the stream, eyes closed, the resonance reader pulsing softly in her lap. She opened her eyes as he approached. "They're coming," she said. He stilled. "Council?" "No," she said. "Them. The ones trying to break the law of silence." "Joran?" She nodded. "And someone named Lenara. They're coming here. To hide." Rai sat beside her. "Then we should prepare." "For what?" "For what comes next," he said. "And what's that?" He met her eyes. "Hope."